Hey there. Happy, what is it, Tuesday? Happy Tuesday, everyone. I hope you're having a good week. Um, I just saw yet again another rather disturbing and sobering um, article about what's actually going on in in America, in this nation. So I think it's been interesting to me, and I've really been interested in it because we got to be talking about what's happening. Like, I think, especially as women, like, we really need to talk about what's going on. Like, I think we got to get past the fantasy, we got to get past the delusion and really talk about, like, what are people going through? And a lot of people right now are having a hard time. And so I don't want to be doom and gloom, but I think it's really important that we actually have real conversations about what's really going on with average everyday people so that hopefully we can come to a conclusion and not live in a fantasy bubble. Um, so just to get right into it, you can see the title Ambitious Dog Mom Faces Homelessness. RIP Independent Women. First, I want to say that my personal opinion is that the whole strong, single, independent woman mindset. I think we're quickly approaching an era where we're going to see that quickly fall and fade because the way that the economy is getting and the way that things are devolving, with talks of the Great Reset and a lot of funding being removed and less jobs being available specifically to women and even minority groups. I think many are going to find that they just can't survive under that mindset. Now, of course, yes, I know women. I know, the small percentage, those who are able to make it and who have a pretty solid living. But by and large, if you try to go this thing alone, especially within the up and coming months or years, I think you're going to find yourself on really, really hard times. And this isn't just my opinion. This is just not my just opinion that came out of nowhere. There are large, reputable sources reporting on this. I mentioned this in a previous live where Time Magazine came out and said that single women are the most at risk. Single women are the most at risk for homelessness. With the rent moratorium happening, they're the most at risk. They are the most likely to face not only economic hard times, but to literally face being on the street. Single mothers and their kids, and there's reasons for this. But that's reality. And again, this is Time Magazine. And so thank you for those of you who have joined. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, tag people on it. Feel free to leave your comments. Also, if you want to support this channel and what we are about, you can find me on Cash App and Venmo, Shay Sade. I want to be able to bring you guys, good content. I want to be able to bring you guys timely content, things that are going to be helpful, but I need your support in order to do that. So again, you can find me on Cash App or Venmo, Shay Sade. You can also send in a super chat. But again, my heart is to really have these real conversations, especially with women, and say, hey, this is what's going on. And so if you are a woman who kind of has been brainwashed, like many of us have been, to believe that, hey, you have to be independent, you have to be strong, you have to do this by yourself, or you should do this by yourself, you should secure the bag, just all the stuff that we've been sold all these decades, these last 50, 60, however many years, I think we are quickly approaching a time where we'll see that that's just simply not going to do it. It's just not. And like I said, there's reasons for this. So I wanted to read this. Let me see, pull this up. I wanted to read this article that I saw from NPR just posted. And it is entitled, let's see, it's entitled, actually, let me see. I'm really going to be homeless with my dog. Tenant face eviction moratoriums end. So I'm going to see if I can actually share this article, and I want to go through it because I think this is a snapshot into what is a very real scenario that many people are going through, and of course this is impacting men and women. I don't want to act like this is just women on the street and men are just doing okay. Like, this is impacting a lot of people, but women, especially single women, single mothers, tend to be the most at risk. And of course, there's reasons for this. Women tend to just make less money across all ethnicities, all races, all across the board, women just tend to make less money. And then you combine that with, kids and those expenses, it puts them in a really precarious state. So let's see if I can share this article, and we're going to go through it real quick. Again, if you like this, please like it, tag people on this, comments. And again, you can support my channel at Cash App or Venmo, Shay Sharday. Okay, let me see if I can share this article real quick. We can go through it. So this is the article I just saw. It says, I'm really going to be homeless with my dog. Tenant face eviction moratorium end. Let's see if I can read this here. Oops. So just to go into it. Literally, the premise of the story is I think they were interviewing a few people. And, there's this one woman in particular. This was a ambitious woman, and she moved down to New Orleans to pursue her careers of being a chef. And then life happened. So let's just hop right into the article. It says, with more than 7 million Americans behind on rent, a tenant describes her situation upon the end of the moratorium on evictions. Then Virginia Poverty Law Center's Christy Mara explains what's next. Okay, let's see. Okay, so it says, the past Saturday night, the last night of July, marked the end of the nationwide moratorium on evictions. That moratorium was put in place by the CDC last September. It's been extended several times. Democrats want the White House to do more. The White House says it's done all it can. Today, the president called on states and cities to extend or implement eviction bans for the next 2 months. Millions of Americans are behind on their rent right now, like Amy Cousino. She is 49 years old. She's from Detroit, Michigan, but she moved south 3 years ago to pursue her dream of becoming a chef in New Orleans. She was fired at the beginning of the pandemic when businesses were shut down. Now, Shapiro speaks. The moratorium helped her stave off eviction, but now that it's expired, she could be kicked out next month. She applied for rental assistance months ago, but is still waiting. Her landlord told her, time has run out. And here's Amy Cousino's response. I have no money to move anywhere. Even if I had somewhere to move, and I tried, I did actually get a job about 4 weeks ago in the place that I got hired the day after my birthday, but they closed down my department because of a Delta outbreak. Between the highly transmissible Delta variant and a surge in violent crime in New Orleans, Cousino says she doesn't know what to do. And again, she says, I hope that other people can get out or that they have friends or families to go to. I just don't. I'm really going to be homeless with my dog. I don't know where I'm going to go to try to sleep. I've been trying to look at places when I'm walking to the store and back. Is there an alley that I can go in? I don't know. I really don't know what I'm going to do. I think I'm kind of in shock, not processing it. Because if I do, I'm just going to fall apart, and I can't do that. That is a sobering truth. And the article continues, and it's kind of the same thing, different people, women pretty much saying, hey, I lost my job. I'm in a situation. I don't know what I'm going to do. I might face homelessness. Now, here's one thing that I've noticed, and just one thing that I've noticed, like different articles I've seen, different videos, different news, reporters focusing on this. Oftentimes what we see is, women. We see women with their dogs or their cats or whatever. It's generally women that I've seen in these different reports who are at risk, who are saying, hey, like I could be homeless any moment. I could be homeless any moment. And again, there's this consistent theme. It's like single women, or sometimes women with kids who are like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I had a job, I lost it. I only have, so much money in my savings, and I'm out of luck. And it's rough. It's rough out there. It's getting rough out there. And something that's really interesting to me about what she actually said in that statement, she was like, other people who are in my apartment, I hope they have families to go to or friends to go to. I don't. Now, why a woman, near 50 doesn't have family or friends or anyone to lean on. I don't know. I mean, there's speculation about that. But as I said before, I think my thoughts and my positions are this. If you're in a situation, if you were a single person, but especially if you were, a single woman, single independent woman, as many of us have been told to do, the reality is it's getting harder and harder and harder to make it. And this is why we're starting to see more OnlyFans. I saw something not too long ago, a woman literally putting an ad out on Craigslist saying, I'll be a living girlfriend. Like, we're going to start to see more and more women go to dire straits just to try to make it. And the reason for this is manifold, right? Like, obviously, this is a really tough economy. Many people have lost their jobs. Many people are struggling. And since it tends to be women that make less money, it's usually more women who are in, service jobs, like retail, especially minority women, like retail, restaurant jobs, things like that. They're going to be the most at risk because they were already making not a lot of money to begin with. And then if you take away the little money that they had, and then you have all this back rent, it's causing chaos. And again, we see this is happening over and over and over again. This is the real reality. And so, I really struggle sometimes when I see a lot of the content talking about, hypergamy or leveling up or trying to secure the bag or, women got it like this and men need to come up to our level or all this stuff that's pumping women's brain up. And I'm like, this is not the reality. This is actually not what's going on. The reality is a lot of women are struggling. And I think there needs to be a space where we say, hey, I'm having a really hard time doing this by myself. I'm having a very hard time because the fact of the matter is most people are. Most people are. And so, I would say, if you're a person that's trying to do it by yourself, especially if you're a woman that's trying to do it by yourself, I just don't think that's a good idea. I think it's getting, again, more and more, it's getting more and more difficult for that to just happen. And so, obviously I'm married and I'm grateful to have the support of a husband, even the support of a family, the support of a church family. But I would advise, especially, younger women, younger single women, don't try to do this by yourself. Please do not try to go and navigate by yourself or get caught up in the lie that says, oh, I'm a strong, single, independent. I don't need a man and I don't need anybody that can do bad by myself. Because reality is you actually might do bad by yourself. You literally might do bad all by yourself. As we are seeing literally Times Magazine report on, NPR report on, CBS report on. I mean, this isn't just like some random, Joe Blow's blog. Like, these are reputable news sources that are saying, hey, this is impacting women. These are just like nameless, this may be somebody that lives, a few doors down you or somebody that you see in the street. Like, these are women, people with stories, with lives, with dreams and ambitions, and they're struggling. So I would advise women, especially, younger women who are maybe trying to figure out what do I want to do. If you're in the place where you're like wanting to figure out your career or, you're like, okay, what do I want to do with my life? Don't try to do this alone. First of all, don't try to do this alone. I've always had the position that I don't think people are meant to be, so independent and solopreneurs. I mean, you can be a solopreneur, but I mean, I've always had the idea that I think we're just better together. Now I will say, I think men have the ability to do things more independently and be okay than women. There's reasons for that. But I think it's, if you, like I said, you put a woman in the wilderness or a man in the wilderness, 9 times out of 10, I think the men's probably gonna do a little bit better. May shoot me for saying that, but just from what I've seen, just what I know about women, we generally like security. And guys, I think there is a reason they were a reason that they were sent off to war. There's a reason men in traditional settings were sent off to war sometimes for weeks and months because they know how to rough it. And so I think men have the ability to be strong-minded, to be a little bit more independent and survive and be okay. Whereas women, I think we can try that, but psychologically and emotionally, our makeup is such that I think it's harder for us. I just think it's harder for us. And like I said, that's my personal opinion. You may or may not agree, but I think it's a bad idea to try to navigate this in this life period, but especially in this economy by yourself. I would say, Of course, I would always say, I am a supporter of marriage if it's done for the right reasons, you know. Um, but if you choose not to marry for whatever reason, or you choose not to be in a relationship with a man, certainly get in the community. Certainly get in the community. I would encourage trying to find a strong faith community, a strong church, or someone where like there's true love and there's true support. I mean, people willing to open up their home with you, or share or build, like, I mean, when there's real community. But I think what's a horrible idea is to try to go and pursue your dreams. Don't invest in any relationships, don't invest in any community, don't invest in whether it's romantic, familial, church, spiritual, whatever. I think that's a horrible idea, especially as a woman, because like I said, the economy is such right now that it's just so difficult for people to get ahead. And the reality is women are most at risk. So anyways, those of you who are just hopped on, please get the likes up, tag anyone on here who may find this useful. As I mentioned before, I think I'm going to stop this article. As I mentioned before, I've been really interested in this topic of what's really going on in the economy, and especially in regards to how it's impacting women, because I think women need to know what's actually happening and what to expect. And it's okay to have dreams, and it's okay to want to, pursue whatever, but we got to know the reality. And I've heard plenty of Black women deserve luxury, and Black women should level up, or women should level up. I've heard all that, but I don't really hear a lot of people talking about what's actually going on today and how hard it is to actually get to that point. So I just want to have a real discussion. I just want to talk about what's actually going on. Many of us know the rent moratorium is, in place. It's rolling out in different states. Some states, I think like California, they're still pausing it. Other states like Nevada, there's a little bit more assistance, but there's, other places like, in Dallas, Texas, or where it's getting real. It's getting real fast. And people are at any moment, any day, can find themselves on the street. And while this affects men and women, women are the most impacted. And so, my take on it is, again, if you're a woman, especially if you're a young woman trying to figure out what you want to do, don't try to navigate this life by yourself. Do not try to navigate your life by yourself, because the economy is such to where you're going to get to the point where it's going to be extremely difficult, if not impossible, to do it by yourself. That's literally the way this economy works. So, of course, I am a supporter of marriage. I support it. And I think if it's done for the right reasons, and that's a whole nother podcast or another video, but if it's done for the right reasons, I think it's a beautiful thing. Obviously, I'm married, but if you are not wanting to marry, or you're not marriage material, if you're not interested or whatever, at least be in a community. I would advise a spiritual community, a religious community, but even if that's not even, like, just be in a community, be in a space where you can make sure you can survive. Because people out there, as we saw in that article from the NPR, from the woman who was just like, I don't have a community, I don't have a family, I don't have friends, so it's me and my dog on the street. This is a woman in her 50s who was going out to New Orleans to be a chef. Again, I don't know why in her 50s she doesn't have any form of a security base. We don't really know what happened, but at the end of the day, she finds herself in a situation where she feels like she has no one to turn to. And you don't want to find yourself in that situation. And the reality is, we are in a time where we can't necessarily do it by ourselves. So, yeah, I think there's I think there is a lot to be said here. Okay, let me see. Okay, I'm getting some questions in. I saw a question. What's going to happen to the divestors who hate on Black men after the Great Reset? Should men take them back? It's a good question. So should the very men that women rejected, should they take these women back if they come to their senses? Yeah, that's a that's a good question. Yeah, I am not a proponent, or I'm not a supporter of anybody getting in a relationship just for apocalypse, just because for the resources, because that's not based upon true love. It's just not. So if a person can't really respect who you are as a person, if a woman can't respect a man for who they are as a person, for their attributes, for what they do, for their ambitions. Like if a woman cannot respect a man, I just don't think you should try to marry them. That's just a horrible idea. It's a really bad idea for many reasons. And I think most men probably know, like, yeah, I'm not going to tie myself to a woman who would disrespect me. Like that seems obvious. But yeah, but that's what I would say. You know, if there's a man out there who's doing okay and he's surviving, and you know, there's a woman that he was interested in, and she didn't give him the time of day, and then we see the great reset happens, and times are hard, and he gets the hey big head text message or DM. Yeah, I don't know if I would encourage a person to take him back. Like, unless there's true love, unless there's a true connection, I don't think that's a real relationship, but I don't think it's really worth time. So yeah, because I think that's why I'm saying, okay, if you are a modern woman and you are just like, nah, I don't want to marry nobody, or I'm not ready to marry, or I'm not ready to submit to a man's leadership or authority. You're just not ready to do it. I'm not ready to submit to a man's authority or leadership. Okay, good for you. But you just have to know what that actually means. You have to know, okay, what does that mean when the economy gets harder? That means if you don't have a partner or somebody you're working with, then it's on you. The onus is on you to take care of yourself. And some women are ready to take that on, and there's some women who are not. Some women who haven't necessarily thought about that. They may think, oh, because maybe you're making 50, 60K, okay, that's gonna sustain you. But like I said, it's these women who are making maybe 50 and 60K. These are the women who they're like, crap, I could be evicted at any moment, because try to retire off of that, or try to save enough money to weather you through a storm for a year or two. That's just really hard to do by yourself. So again, if you are like, you are really want to be out independent, you don't want to submit to a man or work with a man or be cooperative with a man or anything like that, or feel like you just don't want to be in a relationship, that's fine. But I think it's important for you to know what are the upside and what are the downsides for you doing this by yourself. And one of the challenges about doing things by yourself is that you basically have to make enough money to sustain yourself through the good times and the hard times. And unless you have a strong community base, like I said, whether it's a family, maybe brothers, sisters, a mom, a dad, or whatever, a family who would be willing to help you and through hard times, unless you have that, it's going to be difficult. And the reality is, let's just be honest, most of us Black folks, we don't have that, because Black people, by and large, we just don't have a lot of wealth. We don't have a lot of just disposable income like that. So many of us, even if we have well-meaning, aunts and uncles or cousins or brothers and sisters who would want to help, they also don't have the money to help us, because there's not a lot of wealth in the Black community, period. So I said it specifically for Black women. If you are, like I said, if you were like, nah, I don't want to work with a man, I want to do bad all by myself, then you have got to know, what does that actually mean? And again, that means that you are responsible for having to maintain yourself financially long-term. And if you don't have a good enough job to do that, where you can have a solid savings that can sustain you through months, sometimes even years of unemployment, you may find yourself in a situation like this, woman in this article who says, I'm basically almost 50. I want to pursue my dream as a chef, and now me and my dog are facing homelessness because I don't have a family. I don't have a husband. I don't have even brothers or sisters. I don't have anyone to turn to. So again, that is the reality of doing things by yourself. And I think, again, it's important for those of us who decide that we want to be people or women who decide they want to be strong and independent minded. You got to know the pros and the cons. And that's the thing about it. We've heard a lot of the pros, or we've heard a lot of, oh, you can do this, you can do this, you got us, you queen, you are leveling up, all the things that have been told to women to pump up their head. But the reality is, we haven't really heard what are the challenges of that, right? And the loneliness that sometimes with being single. Like, I remember times when I was single, and it would get lonely. And even times when it's like, okay, I had a secure job, I was able to save a couple $100s. It would get lonely. It would get lonely. And literally, I had female friends, strong, single, independent-minded female friends that had their career, and we're calling and talking to each other on the phone. We're just like, okay, I'm sad right now because I'm lonely. I want a hug, or vice versa. Like, that's the reality. I'm talking to single, independent women who are texting me talking about, man, like, it's hard, it's rough out here. That's the reality. So it's like, if you want to do that, no, you may get lonely sometimes. Oh, and by the way, you're also responsible for taking care of yourself fully. You're not working with another person. So, good times, bad times. You get sick, you know what I mean? You got to take care of it. You got a flat tire, you got to take care of it. Pandemic, you got to take care of it. The onus is on you. That's the reality. And so again, if that's what you want, all for it. But you got to know what it actually means. It's not just like this hot girl summer where you're making 7 figures, you got a couple $100,000 in the bank, you're flying around having hot girl summer all the time, living large, and life is good. I mean, that's how it may look on television. That's how it look on the movies that we see, but very, very few. I've actually never met a woman I've never met one woman that has ever had that reality. Well, I've never met one woman that's had that reality. I'm trying to think of all my different situations. Because it's TV and media is not reality. That is a fantasy. But like I said, there's pros and cons to both. So you got to know that. Anyways, thank you for those of you who are just hopped on. Thank you. Is it Daconcast? I hope I did not totally completely butcher that. But thank you for your support. You guys, if you like this content, I will need your support. You can find me on Cash App. You can find me on Ben Moshe Charday. I want to have these conversations with women because I want to see women doing better. And I think a part of doing better is actually having honest conversations, real conversations, and knowing what is the truth. What's the truth? And unfortunately, I don't always see that addressed online. I see a lot of, pumping up and inspiration and stuff, which is good. But I think sometimes we also need to have constructive conversations and say, okay, this is a reality. This is what's going on. So I see some comments. Yes, those of you who are on my community tab, yeah, you notice. I said, yeah, I've even seen a girl asking to move in with you. Yeah, I've actually heard my husband, he's kind of told me this, where, the theory of whether or not it's going to get to the point where women start to push for the legalization of polygamy, which if the economy gets so hard and women finally are just like, I'm done, I'm over this, like, I don't want to be homeless anymore. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if women were just like, you know what, it's better for me to share a high value man versus me being on the street. I don't know. That's just a theory. We'll see if that actually happens. But I can just say my personal opinion based upon the different people that I've seen already who have been kind of pushing or playing around with this idea of polyamory or polygamy. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if some of these same single, independent, strong-minded women, after a few hard knocks and a little bit of homelessness, change their tune. I don't wish that on anyone. And my hope is that we can have a conversation and say, hey, this is what's happening. Prepare yourself. Okay, so please post the article link. Yeah, okay. Actually, can you guys hear me? Okay, so can you guys, I think I hit the mute button. Okay. So when we're done with this, I will post the article link in the description, and you guys can actually check out and see what it is I'm talking about. Yeah, women in the USA advocating for polygamy because they want to share a high value man. Interesting pitch for Saturday Night Live. I actually, I heard that and I was like, nah, I didn't believe it. But honestly, like from what I've seen, even on the online space, and I've seen kind of women kind of joking around with it, I'm like, it doesn't seem to be too far off, to be honest. And again, as things get harder and harder, and strong single-minded women find that their independence is just too costly and they can't afford it, the tune might change. The tune might change. But anyway, so yeah. So again, thank you for those of you who have logged on. Please get the likes up, subscribe, tag people on here that you may find interesting or interested in this topic. And we are talking about independent women and whether or not it's something they can afford and whether or not it's something that can sustain them. And what I've said before, I will say again, that my advice to women, my advice, especially to independent minded women or young women or single women, whatever, is that those days are gone. I think those days have gone. Those days are gone. Of, hey, I can be a florist, or I can, I don't know, do whatever. I can make a job that is maybe grosses 40, 50K, and I'm okay. And I'm doing okay. The economy is getting such. We know inflation is going up. We know many jobs that were available to women, that were available to minority women. Those jobs are going away. There's talk. I think I did. Okay, sorry, I hit the microphone. There's talks of the Great Reset. There's talks of some of the programs that are helping women, especially single mothers, going away, and especially with the the rent moratorium, and people saying, okay, your rent's due, the year and a half of your rent's due. Women, especially single mothers, are the most at risk. I think they said it's around 7 million people right now are behind on rent, and that's probably a low estimate. But case in point, women are going to be the most at risk. Time Magazine has said this. CBS has said this. I saw a video, I think it was from CBS, where it was women who are working in the restaurant industry who are making $2.13 an hour. There's some weird loophole to where they can make $2.13 an hour. And this isn't like immigrants. This isn't people who are working under the table. These are American citizens who somehow have gotten into jobs or restaurants or figuring out that they can pay them pennies. And the struggle is real. And some of them are mothers. The struggle is real. I may link to that too. But case in point, I wouldn't try to do this alone. I would not try to do this alone. I've said before, like, I'm married and I tend to be traditional minded in very many different ways. That's a whole different podcast. But if you're a woman where you are just like, I don't want to submit to no man, I don't want to be under a man's authority, I can do bad all by myself. The issue is that you probably will do bad by yourself. You will likely do bad all by yourself. So please don't try to do that. If you don't see yourself being in a traditional relationship, marriage, whatever, at least get in a community. Don't waste your time, focusing on a career that at max you may get $40,000-$50,000, and find yourself on a struggle bus. Like, literally, the article that I read earlier today, it was a woman basically in her 50s who moved down to New Orleans to pursue her career as being a chef. Now, here's the thing about being a chef. I worked in the restaurant industry for like 5-6 years. I'm a foodie. I love cooking food. I love playing around in recipes. And I actually, when I was younger, I considered being a chef. I considered going to culinary school. I keep on hitting the microphone. I considered being in the culinary school. And the reason that I decided to not do that was because I started working around chefs and I talked to them and I figured out that being a chef is an incredibly gruesome, for many people, it's an incredibly gruesome job at your climax. Like, if you are doing well, you're working maybe 14, 15, 16 hours a day. And again, I know a chef who has like a world-renowned restaurant, was like on CNN, does really well. And I remember having a conversation with him and he was like, it's rough, it's a 14, 15, 16 hour days. And he was like, I don't know that I would recommend you to do it. He would just give me his perspective. He was like, I love doing it. It's my calling. But I had a conversation with him and he was like, I don't know if I would recommend you to do it because it's really gruesome. And most chefs there were not, most chefs, your average chef, I think, makes anywhere between 40 to 50K, depending on, it may go up or down a little bit, depending upon, the city. But by and large, it's not a job that you do if you want to make it big. And it's certainly not a job you want to do if you want to have, a family. Some people are able to do it. We see famous male chefs and stuff, but like it requires your life. Like it requires so much of you. And so that is actually why I decided not to go to culinary school, because I knew in order for me to be successful, I would have to work hours upon hours. I wouldn't have a life. And then I knew the likelihood of me even making it was, whatever that means, was very small. And then on top of that, if I was to make it, I'm working 14, 15 hours a day. And I'm like, if I want to have kids, how was that going to happen? And so that is why I personally decided not to be a chef. Now, why do I share that story is because the article that I shared with you, again, it was a woman in her 50s who pursued her career to be a chef. So a lot that I've told you, right, that being a chef, you're working 14, 15 hours a day on average. The average is also that you like, oh, sorry, so I'm getting all these notifications and I need to figure out how to turn those things off. Let me see if I can figure out how to do that. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, so again, why is that important? A 50-year-old woman decides that she wants to be a chef. Hashtag no judgment. If that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. But the challenges of being a chef is you're working a ton of hours, like 14, 15 hours. And again, this is what I saw, working in the restaurant industry and what I did talking to different chefs, talking to different sous chefs. They're working crazy hours. Secondly, they're not making a ton of money. I remember one guy he'd been a chef for like 20, 25 years and he was making like, I think 45K. And that was after him working a really, really long time. So yeah, you're not making necessarily a ton of money. And it's incredibly competitive. If you do actually make it, let's say you have your own restaurant or you have a few restaurants, that's your life. That is your life by and large. And so, for a 50-year-old woman to go and pursue her career and get in a career that the likelihood of her getting a lot of money, her having no family, her having no time for family, having no time for relationships, having no time for anybody, why would somebody at 50 decide to do that? I don't know. I can't speak for it, but the implications for that is now, unfortunately, she's in a position where she's 50 and her and her dog are like, we have nowhere to go because we don't have family. We don't have friends because we didn't have time for family and friends. And we also don't have money because presumably whatever jobs that we had up to that point did not give us enough money to save so that we could sustain ourselves through times like this. And that's the tough, rough thing. That is a tough, rough thing about being a single-minded, independent woman, especially if you're a single-minded, independent woman that is not going into a really high-earning job, which most of us are not. So, let me see, debate a feminist with factual data. Yeah. So, well, and here's the thing. I'm not here to tell anyone that they are right or wrong on their choices. I'm more about here is a reality, because I think the challenge is so often we see, we just see people kind of in their own little bubble. They're just like, it's like people in their bubble. It's like an echo chamber. They're talking and they're hearing themselves talking. And so they're not actually getting a full picture. And so I think as a woman, you should have a choice. If you want to be more traditional, if you want to be more modern, okay, since that's what people have pushed for. That's what, whether it's feminist or however you want to put it, that's what the nation has gone towards. It's, more and more equality on all levels, which that's essentially that's the idea of what it means to be in American society. But with that free choice, with that freedom, you have got to know the implications. And I think so often than not, we hear, we hear the ideal scenario, but we don't actually hear what's real. We don't actually hear the reality. And, the reality of trying to live in this nation, in this economy, in this competition-based economy, trying to live and survive by yourself is incredibly difficult. And it becomes even more difficult when you are a woman for specific reasons. It becomes even more difficult when you are a minority, and even more difficult if you don't have a support base. And unfortunately, the strong, single, independent, I can do better by myself ideology does not give women the room to have a support base, a solid support base, meaning people where, God forbid, I run on hard times, I have somewhere to stay, I have somewhere to lay my head, someone maybe who I can resources in or share resources in, and we can survive. That doesn't really fit into the strong, single, independent minded mindset. But the reality is, many of us or many people currently are in situations where they're in dire need and they need that. They need that. And so I wanted to read that article about the ambitious dog mom, because I thought, not only did it to me seem like, okay, this is a snapshot of what's actually happening in this nation, I thought it gave a really well-rounded reality of, here are the challenges. And again, I don't want to be doom and gloom. I know single women right now who have really high powered jobs, high paying jobs, and they are doing fine. They have home, they're doing fine economically. Now, the challenge is also with being single and strong and independent is that, then you got to think about loneliness. It can get lonely sometimes. You got to think about, okay, I have a friend who we're going to a baby shower now. All right. Or, okay, now I'm going to a wedding by myself. And if you get to a certain age, then sometimes you're going to a wedding by yourself. Sometimes it can make you feel a little insecure. And the reason I'm saying this is because, hey, I went through this, right? I went through having times of being like, okay, like, I guess I should be okay. Like I'm making, solid money for what it is. I'm happy in my career, but man, like I'm going to another wedding right now and I'm by myself, or man, like here my friend is having their third baby and I'm not even on my first. Like I had moments like that, or, go into situations and you're the third or the fourth or the fifth wheel. Those are the realities. And again, women that I know who are single and have their maybe career, they have their whatever it is that they love, then they may be a little bit lonely because they had to spend a lot of time building that. They had to spend a lot of time building that, doing it is what they love. And that's their choice. It's not a bad thing, but sometimes it can also create loneliness. And so again, I think it's more important that a person actually knows what are the up and the downsides. We've heard a lot. I think there's been a lot of narrative about the upsides of being independent. There's been a lot of narrative of the upsides of sexual liberation. There's been a lot of narrative about, hot girl summers. There's been a lot of, I think, then there's been a lot of fantasy talk around, traditional women, or just fear-based. This fear-based are just like, oh, if you end up with a guy or you marry a guy or you submit to a guy, then you're going to be abused. So we've all heard that. Many of us have heard that. We've heard that all before. But what we haven't really heard is, okay, the downsides of being independent-minded, being single, and also some of the upsides of the security that you can have when you are in a traditional family, nuclear family, or when you have just a strong community in which you invest in on a regular basis. So you've got to know whatever you're going to do. If you want to be independent minded, okay, but you got to know the upside and the downside. If you're going to be traditional nuclear family, okay, great. The up and the downside. But I think to me, that's something that I'm really passionate about. And that's something that I think it's important that women know. So again, thank you for those of you who have, logged on. Thank you, Percy. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry. Yeah, thank you for catching me live. I really appreciate it. For those of you who just recently hopped on, please subscribe if you have not already. Tag anybody on here who you think may find this information important. To me, it is incredibly important that we start to have real, candid, honest conversations with women so that they are prepared on what is to come and prepared on what is happening. Because many of us have been told things, I think, that can lull us to sleep and not prepare us for some of the challenges that may arise. And unfortunately, some women are they're being shaken out of their sleep through dire circumstances like homelessness. And while I certainly don't want to speak doom and gloom, that is a reality that many are going to be facing, men and women, yes, but single women and single mothers in particular are the most at risk. And so again, I would say, um, know what's out there and prepare yourself. Prepare yourself. I would not recommend doing this life alone. I definitely would recommend women in particular. Um, if you're not going to go the marriage route, if you're not going to go into the authority of a man or work with a man or cooperate or whatever, at least have a strong community. Have a strong community. Um, have a strong, whether it's a church community, a religious community, a spiritual community, or family, have a group of people that really, really have your back and you have each other's back. So if you find yourself in hard times, you're not out in the street, you're not fending for yourself, but you have people who will love you and will help you weather the storm. So, yeah, it's just looking forward to reading the news article you referenced today. Yeah, I will. I'm going to go ahead and try to put those in my description so that you guys can check it out. I found it sobering. It was a sobering reality. It's especially to me sobering when it's like when you start to hear like mainstream media reporting on this stuff, because we all know that they have an agenda. Let's just be real. We all know that a lot of these news sources have an agenda, but when it's like when the problems are so obvious that even they are reporting on it, it's like, okay, this is bad. Like this is bad. And I can already say, I've seen in my own community out here where you sort of see more homelessness or just more things that you didn't see before. I was even surprised because I'm not too far from, like, there's a 10-15 minutes from me is a multi-million-dollar home development, for example. So in an environment like that, you would think, oh, people are doing well. Oh, like people don't really are struggling. They may just be, I guess they may just be, I don't know, having a good time. But best believe that I found out that they were starting to have, passing out free lunches and passing out free foods. And I started to see really, really long lines at schools. I started to see really, really long lines at, middle schools, elementary schools. And these are in districts where, homes are worth like millions of dollars. And when I saw that, I was like, dang, like nobody is exempt from this. Everybody in all aspects of life are being affected or being impacted. And so that's what I'm saying. Let's get out of the fantasy. Let's get out of fantasy. Because it's real out there. Okay, let's see. Percy, you wouldn't like me whenever. Okay. To be fair to the Black women, do you think they have to be strong and independent because of the money men who are leaving them high and dry with babies? My mom had 6 kids. Every man left. Wait, okay. So you're saying, do you think women have this persona of they have to be strong-minded because they don't have men there to protect them? That's a good. I think that's a layered question. So a couple of things I will say. Let me put this on do not. Okay, sorry about that. Like I said, okay, I need to figure out how to mute all my notifications. Maybe one of these days I will. Yeah, so that's a good question. So basically, do some women feel like they have to be strong and independent because they don't have a choice? To answer your question, yes. I think, yeah. I mean, many of us have been socialized, especially Black women. We have been socialized that like, okay, we can do it by ourselves. We have to do it by ourselves. We've all heard the narrative like, oh, Black women carried the Black community. I disagree with that narrative to a certain point for many reasons. I feel like that's a whole other conversation. But yes, I will say that we've been socialized to be independent, to be strong, because we've had to. I mean, going through slavery and then Jim Crow, sharecropping. I mean, it's like my grandma was a sharecropper. You know what I mean? And I remember her telling me stories, and it's just like she didn't have a choice but to be strong. And so I do think that, yes, we have had to be strong. The issue is, I think you can still be strong, but also cooperative. Just because you're strong doesn't mean that you have to be combative, or just because you're strong doesn't mean that you can't get along with a man. Because to assume that being able to get along with a man or have a healthy relationship with a man means that you're weak, I think that's kind of a bad setup. And so I think what often happens is that sometimes we're told to be strong, But sometimes strong is also code for combative, or we just don't know how to have healthy relationship skills, or we're also taught how to choose wrong. Sometimes us women, we are not taught how to choose maybe the guy who has a good vision, or who's, in school trying to be whatever, I know, a lawyer or engineer or a doctor, or even if he's not, like, just having a solid job, you know what I mean? Being a hardworking plumber, or like, just, I don't think we've been taught how to look for guys who are good hearted, who are hardworking and are trying to do the right thing. So often it's about trying to find the hottest guy, the athlete, the F boy, or whatever. Like, I think sometimes the choices are bad. We're not socialized to choose what's good. And so then we get bad results, and we get guys who leave us, or we get guys who treat us wrong because we didn't choose right from the beginning. And so I don't think that has anything to do with strength. I think that has more to do with, like I said, relationship skills, maybe trauma that we've experienced that we haven't dealt with. Maybe not even having good examples. Like, if you grew up and your parents were together, then how do you know what a healthy relationship looks like? On top of that, what we see on media for many women, whether or not they want to admit it, is it's their driving force. It is their driving force. And so if you go on media and you see, oh, well, the hot guys look like this, or all you see is black men, either black men are portrayed as gay or as hypersexual. If that is your idea of, like, okay, this is what a black man is, then you're likely going to go with, like, the hypersexual. You're going to go with the hyposexual one, which oftentimes, like I said, it's a facade. And I think it oftentimes can have you overlook the good guy who, yeah, maybe they're not in there trying to be a model, or they're not in there lying to you or playing game, because they're about their purpose. They're about their vision. They're not lying. They're not out there trying to run game. They're trying to build their empire. They're trying to build their vision, or they have their vision. They see clearly, and they're working towards that. So they don't have any reason to lie to you or to take advantage of you. So I hope I'm making sense. But in my experience, and I would say this isn't just women in general. This isn't just black women. This is women in general. I have seen take on this. What's that word? It's the word when you are attracted to danger. There's a word for it that is like, I'm just forgetting it right now, but it's basically young women are attracted to danger. And I see this most often with young women. Their late teens and 20s are attracted to the hot guy, to the guy that gives them adventure, the guy that gives them, like, either the swag or the passion, because we want the passion. We grow up and we see the romance novels, and we see the I don't know, the soap operas and the books and the Disney. So, like, we want the passion, we want the excitement. And so many women, period, this is not just black women, many women, period, have that. Now, I think other communities, like, the Asian community, the Indian community, they have a stronger communal and cultural base in general. So they probably have aunts and uncles or moms who were telling them, here is an expectation. And so I think for that reason, you may have a Chinese girl sleep with a Pookie, or a Chinese girl go mess around with somebody that she knows she's not supposed to mess around with. But at the end of the day, she's gonna take a smart pick. She's gonna, sober up and be like, okay, but I'm still gonna take my Chinese boyfriend home to my Chinese mother at the end of the day. Or I'm still gonna choose the guy who's studying to be a doctor versus the dude who's trying to be, I don't know, who's not in school, who's hanging out, being an entrepreneur. You know what I mean? So it's like, so I think every woman has that, but I just think because there's a stronger cultural base, and there's stronger pressure from the community to choose wise. I think some women just choose wiser. Unfortunately, in the black community, sometimes we got, our aunts or older women who are either competing with us or saying, "Oh, girl, he fine, he this, he that, he that," and but they may be single. They may have been single their entire life. And so they don't necessarily have the knowledge or the acumen to tell us, hey, that's not a good pick. Don't mess with him. They may just say, oh, he's cute, go for him. You know what I mean? That's just my theory. That's just my theory. I think because there's not a strong cultural base, unfortunately, or a strong community in the Black community, then there's not as much accountability. And when there's not accountability, then women are they're just left to run wild, for better for worse. Young people, young women are left to run wild without accountability. And I don't think anybody, especially young people, I don't think anybody should be without accountability, um, for multiple reasons. So I hope that answers your question. I know that was a bit of a rant, but yeah. So just I appreciate those of you who have popped on. Again, if you find this useful, please like, comment, subscribe to my channel. Also tag people or share this with people that you know, especially women that you know who may find this insightful or who are maybe stuck in a fantasy and who need to know what's going on. Because while I'm all for encouraging women, I think it's also good that we have constructive conversations and talk about what's happening. And so, the economy it's going to get harder. Things are going to get rougher. Some women are going to, find it hard for them to find jobs that are within their skill set. And I wouldn't try to do this alone. So again, I'm all for marriage. I'm all for, finding a man that you can respect and honor, and work with him and honor his vision and support his vision. I'm all for that. I think marriage is a beautiful thing. I think it's, something God created. But that's a whole other thing. I'm not talking about the legal contract. That's a whole other podcast. But if you don't, like I said, if you are more modern minded and you're just like, I don't want to get married, I don't want to come under the authority of a man, or I don't want to work with a man, I don't want to cooperate with a man, I don't want to support his vision, none of that kind of stuff. Cool. You just got to know, okay, if you're going to do this thing by yourself, what does that mean? That means that you're going to be responsible for yourself on all capacities. That means that you may not feel as protected. You may not be as protected. You may not have a security base should you lose your job, should you fall on hard times. You don't have that. It may also mean just on a psychological level, you face loneliness. I don't really hear a lot of people talking about that all the time when in this independent mindset, but you may face loneliness. Even if you decide to have multiple sexual partners, which I do not support, but if you decide to do that, you may face some loneliness when you say you're invited to a wedding, or you're not even invited to a wedding. You may just be, I don't know, walking down the street and you see a family or a woman with her kid. Like, these are the kinds of things that weigh on women sometimes. And so you have to know, if you decide to be modern minded, those are the implications. There's psychological implications, and there's also monetary implications. And if you're wanting to be single and pursue your desire to be, a chef that I think on average makes anywhere between 40 to 60K, you should probably look at what is that going to mean long term. Because in the current economy, you making 40 to 60K, especially if you're living like in a city like Bay Area, you're not going to make it. Inflation's going up, things are getting going higher and higher, and it's getting rough. And so I would personally recommend, if you're not going to be in a nuclear family, at least find a community, at least find a support base that, if God forbid you find yourself in a situation where you don't have consistent income in anymore, or you're laid off, or you're just on hard times, like many of us, many people are in hard times, at least you have a security blanket. You're not, unfortunately, like the 50-year-old woman, the 50-year-old ambitious dog mom who was pursuing her culinary career, got let go, and now she's on the street. You don't want to be that if you can avoid it. So I hope this is making sense. Thank you for everyone who has logged on. Yes, as African parents don't talk about dating, the first time y'all have the marriage talk is a week after. Yeah, that is facts. That is facts. I'm married to an African man, and so we've had conversations like that. My parents technically, they're like American born, and they're, but I low key was like raised the same way, where it's like it was focusing on school. And then we hit a certain age, and it was just like, wait, oh, now you're marriage. And I was like, wait, how did we go from education to marriage? Okay. So I get it. I think, sometimes parents do the best they can, but I've heard that in African culture where sometimes it's like school, and then at a certain age, you're just supposed to be married. And it's like, well, how does this actually happen? But that is another topic altogether. So anyways, thank you for those of you who have logged on. I really appreciate your support. I really appreciate your all of you guys, your content and your comments. I hope you find this helpful. Again, I think women need to hear the truth. They need to hear the upside and the downside so that they can choose. I'm not for telling people what they want to hear just to make them feel good, especially if that's going to lead them in a ditch, you know, in the long run. And as dudes already know this, many guys already know this. I don't know that women are talking about it, but you know, we're getting to a place where it's getting rougher and rougher. The economy is actually doing what it's supposed to do. So I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with, you know, the economy. It's just, I mean, this is capitalism. It's supposed to get more and more competitive. And you're going to see the richer get rich and the poorer get poorer. That's the system working the way it's supposed to work. So if we know that that's what's going to happen, then I think people should, you know, we should plan accordingly and say, okay, where do I find myself in this? So those are just some of my thoughts, some of my feedback. Thank you again for logging on. I think I'm about to hop off because we've been on for an hour. And I thank you all those for who've been sending in some love and super chats. Again, if you want to support this channel and support this content, you can find me on Cash App or Venmo, Shay Sade. I want to bring you more content like this. I want to be able to talk about hot topics and bring solutions, but I will need your support in order to do so. So again, you can find me on Cash App, Venmo, Shay Sade. If you have any other questions, comments, concerns, leave it in the comment section below. I will also link the article. I will link the article in the description and for you guys, you know, to read through. And yeah, hopefully you find it insightful. And again, if you think this video was useful, share it to anybody, especially share it to women who may benefit from this. So again, thank you so much. And we're gonna hop off and we'll talk later. Okay, bye.